Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the third video on shutdown, turnaround and outage. This video number 3. Let us get right into this subject by asking this question. What is the key elements for successful turnaround? Number 1, start early enough. What is the meaning of early enough? For example, the planning process in most turnaround and shutdown should begin from 12 to 18 months prior to the turnaround start. Also, the pre-turnaround activities should be scheduled and tracked just as aggressively as the turnaround activities itself. Virtually all failures during turnaround execution can be related to defects and failing in the pre-turnaround process itself. So once we able to arrange for successful pre-turnaround activities, we will eliminate the possibility of failures during the execution itself. The second key elements for successful turnaround is to treat turnaround, shutdown, and outage as a project. What is the meaning of project? It means implement all the elements and techniques and control system for turnaround similar to projects, including this type of techniques for estimating technique, either estimating man-hour, estimating budget, estimating resources, estimating materials and tools. Also planning, proper planning, similar to the project planning, cost analysis, cost engineering, application of critical path methods and programming evaluation, review technique and scheduling, and utilizing all the software which used in project, similarly in turnaround and shutdown. Number 3, apply best practice. What we mean by best practice? Best practice includes actually a lot of parameters to be considered, including work scope preparation, initial work scope preparation, from which we create the work list, and for any work to be or any item to be within the work scope, it should be justified, so should have a justification why it is in the scope and why it is not in the scope. Also, we have to decide during this best practice who will execute the turnaround. Is it a combination of in-house and outsourcing resources, or it is solely in-house only, or solely outsourcing? Also, any estimation also should be considered during the, as a best practice, the proper technique of estimations, including the cost estimations and the manpower forecast estimation as well. Next key element for successful turnaround and shutdown and outage, including professional turnaround management team, assigning the professional turnaround management team. That team should include executives, schedulers, planners, safety, procurement, logistics, inspection, and engineering people. This team must be identified and assembled as soon as possible after the previous shutdown completed. after the end of the previous shutdown, that team must be identified and assembled. Normally, the core team will consist of all these valuable members in that list, and also depends on the size of the plant, the size of the shutdown. Some other rules might be applicable by the same person. So, for example, we might allocate planning and scheduling for the same person, and we might also allocate safety and inspection for the same person, and so on. So it depends. It depends on the site of the facility and on the site of the plant. The next element is to provide strong management sponsorship and to manage the turnaround successfully. All managers should fully understand, should be aware about their own rules and their own duties in the turnaround and shutdown regarding their own area or their own terrain or their own department. Also, supervisors must know what to expect from outside sourcing or from outside contractors, and to be able to coach and monitor the progress of outsourcing and contractors. Also, it's recommended to use a checklist, turnaround and shutdown checklist, to make sure that all aspects of the turnaround are completed and under management and under work control. The next one is to control the scope. What is the meaning of scope? Scope, it is a document to serve as a contract or agreement between different parties, between different key persons or key discipline within the turnaround activities. Could be between engineers and operation, could be between planning and execution, could be between a certain area and another area, and so on. That document, including work agreement, and it make expectation clear. Every participant or every discipline will be able to know exactly what is the expectation, and agreed upon this expectation between parties, whoever will be involved. It also include that work scope, include work details, expected outcomes, anticipation, inspections, and anticipation of repair or replacement or upgrading or whatever maintenance needs, whatever changes or whatever inspection, whatever upgrade needed, even for the next period, for the next so many years in advance. So that is scope initiating the process, coming after, initiating the execution coming after later on. One of the most important successful element for turnaround is resource leveling. Resource leveling, unfortunately, in traditional project scheduling, whenever we're using network diagrams, it would create the most efficient schedule without regard for that resource leveling. And accordingly, resource leveling must be performed in another separate effort to make sure that the schedule will be realistic and achievable. The benefit of resource leveling is to increase project efficiency by utilizing the whatever resources available at hand, and without any need for higher resource requirement, and of course that will reflect on the project and turnaround cost itself. As we see here in this chart, a comparison between two scenarios the first scenario with the red color is not labeled, and the another scenario with resource labeled, assuming you have a limited resource. For example, that axis, vertical axis, represent the resources available and the resources required, and the horizontal one representing the days on the turnaround activity. So if we are limited to a certain amount of man-hour resources, whatever the amount of man-hour resources, so we can reduce this peak requirement and reallocate all over the days of the project, as we see here again in that chart. Let us now talk about the phases of shutdown turnaround, which include 4 phases: initiation, preparation, execution, termination. As we see in the chart here, the phases are not in consequence. There is some overlap between phases. It is not like the running maintenance, which has a consequence phase starting by work identification, then planning, scheduling, execution, documentation, analysis, and reporting. Here, the situation is different. Phases are overlapped. The objective of the phases is to try to make the execution phase to be the easiest phase, because during the execution we able to accomplish the objective and the scope of the shutdown and turnaround. As we see in this table, every phase should be started within certain timing. For example, large turnaround, the initiation phase normally start from 12 to 24 months prior to execution. Then phase 2 preparation should start from 6 to 12 months before execution. And the termination will take from 1 to 2 months after execution. Normally execution could take from 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the size of the facility. Of course, the medium and small turnaround will have different periods for every phases, which normally could be less than the large turnaround. For example, the small turnaround preparation might only require 1 or 2 months, and the termination might require only half to 1 month. The importance of the initiation phase can be represented by this chart, which indicating a relationship between the effect of every phase on both the expenditures, the cost, and the flexibility, ability to influence the performance of the turnaround. As we see here, once the turnaround scope is released for execution, the cost of making any change will exponentially grow, and in the same time, on the other side, the flexibility is decreasing. It is essential that, according to this trend, it is essential that modification is better to be considered in the early stage, in the initiation stage, because at this stage we will have 2 advantages actually. The first advantage is low expenditures or the low cost requirement, and the second advantage is the high ability and the flexibility to influence the performance. Actually, some companies reported that any change which might made in the late stage, in the execution stage, will cost maybe from 100 to 1,000 times as much as those which made in the early initiation stage. And virtually all failures during turnaround execution is related to or can be referred to the failing in the initiation stage or in the initiation phase process. That's why we try to make the execution easier by considering the initiation stage and avoiding any later change in the late stage or in the execution stage. Okay, we are interested also very much about what we mentioned before, the best practice, which was one of the key elements for successful turnaround is best practice. Best practice can be achieved by many key issues, by monitoring the turnaround and by defining the critical element of the turnaround. Critical element including those elements which has a high impact on profitability through different measurable, deliverable issues or items, including cost, loss of income or revenue, potential harm to plant reliability and the equipment effectiveness, and the issue related to safety and the health and environmental risk. Why do turnaround succeed? Why do turnaround succeed? One of the items mentioned early was to apply the best practice. What we mean by best practice? Best practice including many items, a work list, initial work scope, and while we preparing work scope, we have to prepare justification for task which included or excluded from our work scope. The organization and the steering committee, the basic cost estimation during the initiation stage, and the duration estimation of the time, estimation of the duration, and also the estimation and the forecast for manpower and resources, including who will do the execution. Are we going to do it using outsourcing, supporting our in-house and our available resources? So all these items contribute very much to what we mean by best practice. Best practice items or the key elements of best practice should be measured by deliverables. Deliverables means completion of each phases, how it is assessed, how we assess the completion of any phases by using what was expected as a deliverable from this phase. So the deliverable is the indication of completion of each phase. It is a similar of milestone. So for any product or for any service or for any activity, what is the result of this activity? What must be completed? Those what must be achieved or what must be completed. This is what we mean by deliverable. Deliverable include planning, scheduling, identification of the work scope, equipment required to be maintained, to be upgraded, what resources, the critical path schedule, the refined budget estimations, updating the preliminary and approved work list, and the lead time for material procurement or material ordered, and additional work approval process, and also the cut-off date or work scope frozen time. The initiation phase has key issues, and these key issues must be addressed during the shutdown initiation phase, which include answering and identifying all these parameters: who will execute the shutdown, what resources, what support we need, when we should start shutdown date, how long it will take, shutdown duration, what equipment will be taken offline, what equipment required upgrading or maintenance or repair or replacement, and if there is any equipment to be installed. The key dates for each phase, the budget, even a rough estimation of the budget, what is the objective of shutdown, what equipment to be modified or to be upgraded, what is the scope of work for equipment which will be taken offline, and who will manage the shutdown. So all this represent the key issues for shutdown. Who should take care about these key issues? The shutdown team. Shutdown team must be identified and nominated and assembled as soon as possible after the end of the previous shutdown. The team including execution team, scheduling, schedulers, planners, safety, procurement, logistics, inspection, engineering, all these are stakeholder and representing the shutdown team. Normally, the core team will consist among or including the core team, including all these parties, and depending on the size of the facility, depending on the size of the plant, some rules might be done by some same person. For example, schedulers and the planners could be done by one person, inspection and testing may be done by same person, and so on. Procurement and logistics may be done by the same person. So it depends on the size of the plant and the size of the facility. In addition to the shutdown team, we should also have a shutdown committee. It is in addition to the team. Shutdown committee should also be appointed, and the committee will meet regularly to make decisions on the key shutdown issues. And the shutdown committee would normally consist of maintenance managers, supervisors, processing manager, superintendent, senior maintenance supervisor from different discipline, from different area, senior material management person, reliability engineer persons, and any valuable members to be included in the shutdown committee. Work scope. What is the meaning of work scope? Work scope is the statement of work, STO or WS. WS work scope, STO statement of work. It is a document which serves as a contract or agreement between different parties who are involved in the shutdown and turnaround. The work scope include work details, expected outcome, a scoping process aimed at eliminating all non-essential, non-turnaround scope items, of course based on justification. Scoping process means scoping team will assess the condition of equipment and units and identify if there is any gap between the current condition and the current effectiveness and the current reliability and what it should be and what the design condition should be. Work scope process apply comprehensive scope quantification and control and change process during the course of turnaround planning and execution. Scoping process can be represented as the primary source of cost and scheduling overrun. Any chaos in the scoping process can allow for significant scope growth after the scope freezes. So it has to be probably considered the work scope process and the scope of the turnaround. It is also to document the working agreement between two parties. It make expectation clear and agree